Good evening, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining. Nandini, hi. Puneet, Dr. Sheila, good evening.
Hey, good evening.
Good evening. For those I haven't met before, I'm Suma. I manage the community at Beforest. We have Sunit, CEO at Beforest, and Keta with us. We'll just give everybody a few minutes to start joining in and then start off our session. So glad you could all join us. Anand, Shikha, hi. How are you doing? Hi, Vivek.
Hi, Suma. How are you? I'm good.
Very good.
Glad to see you.
Radhesham. Same, I would say same thing, but I don't see you on video. But I'm glad you could join.
Yeah. Thank you. Hi, Sunit. Hi, Keta.
Hi everyone. I see a lot of members here. Good
Yeah.
evening to you all.
Yes.
So
We'll
Suma,
just wait 2 more minutes. Ha, Vivek.
Suma, make me co-host. And hi, Dr. Sheila. Good evening. Vamsi, Radhesham. Very good evening to all of you. Puneet, Mohan, great to see you. Mohan, audio is getting connected. Just allow.
Who's the permaculturist? And we have Sunit, who, as you all know, is CEO at Beforest. He's the one who kicked off this dream that we have all aligned ourselves to, and looking forward to being with his vision for the next many generations to come. So I'm going to hand over the stage to Sunit. This is going to be a conversational session between Sunit and Keta. Keta is on ground handling a lot of the work that we are trying to do. So Sunit, handing it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Suma. And good evening, everyone. So as you all know, this whole Talking Trails series is where we try share our learnings and the incredible experiences that we've had trying to set up Beforest and all the amazing people that we meet. And when we were trying to plan this next one, we just realized that we had some family jewels to showcase as well. And we thought, why don't we start with the lead ecological designer, Keta, and talk how to plan a food forest with her. So to Keta and I have been working together on these collectives for almost 2 years now, and we've had the most heated debates. And I really like her view on how things are expected to be planned, not just at Beforest, but sustainability in general. And I thought it's worth sharing it with the rest of the member community and others also. So, Keta, welcome to Beforest and this talk.
Thanks, Sunit. Hi, everyone.
So, Keta, do you want to introduce yourself, your experiences of the past? What brought you here? How did you get into Beforest to start with?
Sunit, I'll just take a moment. Could you make Vivek also the one of the hosts, please?
I've done that.
He'll be able to handle a few things. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, Keta, can you just introduce yourself and your journey with Beforest, how you got in here? A quick summary of the last 2 years.
So I actually heard about Beforest 3 or 4 years ago, 3 years ago, initially in its initial stages, and found it very interesting and called up Sunit and asked him what it was about. How does this collective, what does it mean? What does a collective mean? And when they say Beforest, what are they trying to do? So at that time, it was of course, it was new and it was being formed, and it was very exciting because we were talking about how you want to build a community and you want to ensure that there is a certain part of what this community, the land that this community inhabits together, has to be left natural, and you're trying to understand your boundaries of how much to leave natural, what is the right balance of it all, how to find a balance between growing food, being a home for humans, being a home for animals, and really understanding the landscape. So that's what really hooked me in the beginning. And I really liked, I mean, for me, the selling point at that time was the fact that there is a certain guarded off wilderness area. And that's where I think we connected, because prior to this, my journey has been sort of to push through education and through whatever I've been trying to bring to notice that nature has its own space. Nature, like a human community, needs its respect and needs to be understood. And because it's doing a lot, it's like us humans who do a lot of work. Each tree, each soil, each animal is doing its own job. So that's what initially connected us. And yes, I ever since I've come in, I have worked largely with the Hyderabad estate, and so the region would be a semi-arid dryland. Although if you see the estate, it doesn't look so dry, and only in the summer is it quite brown. But it's a very beautiful rocky landscape.
Yeah. In
Yes.
fact, I keep telling a lot of people that if you imagine, for those familiar with Hyderabad, if you imagine Jubilee Hills or Banjara Hills without the houses, this is exactly how it would look.
Yeah, I have heard. Yeah, there used to be orange farms all over Banjara Hills before.
Yes, yes. So, I mean, amazing. I'm glad you found your way here. And so, interesting thing is when Keta called up, that's when we were actually looking to build our own permaculture team rather than depend on outside help. And it was almost big coincidence that around the time when I started searching for people who would work for us, she reached out, and it's been amazing having her on board. So, Keta, let's drive straight in. And I wanted to start off this conversation with, instead of heading into planning for a food forest, one of the most frequent questions and misunderstandings I've come across in the last 3-4 years of Beforest is when we talk to people, the term food forest means a lot of different things for different people. Those who have been to, let's say, the Western Ghats think of a forest as a dense jungle. Those who have been to Africa think of it as never-ending grasslands. And I'm just talking about forest. And when we add food to it, people get, I think, a little confused about what is this really. So let's start off with what really is a food forest? Is there a technical definition at all, or is it just some kind of a loose idea?
Yeah, so like you said, if we were to start with forests, there are across the world, across the different regions, there are different types of forests. So at Hyderabad, we have a scrub forest, Coorg is the rainforest, and a food for and that is natural. So a forest has many layers of vegetation. And that's essentially kind of what's defining its forest-like feel and structure. And a food forest is, as a system, is basically a food growing system that's trying to mimic this forest-like structure, both in its structure, in its physical structure, as well as its biological activity. And so that's what a food forest, if you were to technically define, it would be a system of edible plants, and it could be different sources. So it is largely a perennial system that we're talking about, because in the forest, like you said, in the forest, there are a lot of trees, bushes that bear fruit, there are medicinals, there are vines that, do its job. So in the same way, a food forest would, you would have in your garden itself, on your root, you would have a lot of edible berries, you would have all your spices, trying to grow your spices, your herbs, any kind of other, your spinach, maybe in a perennial way. Perennial, for those of you who who I might need to explain, is it's a plant that continuously bears fruit over years. You don't have to remove it, so it's not like it
Like
has
a mango, for example.
yeah,
Like a
it's
mango
not-
tree.
yeah. So our vegetables are what we call seasonals and annuals, but our mango, even our papaya, it goes on, lives on.
Mm, mm.
And our food forest would primarily consist of a perennial system. So you don't have to, the idea of a food forest is to have less work, continuous work that the steward has for the land, and have your forest system keep producing food.
Okay, okay. So to think of it, we're really talking about a three-dimensional space, or rather than looking at it as just one, two dimensions of one layer of food growing, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So I remember, Keta, when you first came, all the brief that was given to you really was, we want to grow a forest system that also grows food. I don't think we used the term food forest back then, but now can you throw some light on where permaculture fits into this? Why permaculture? Because that we never came to you with the brief that, hey, we want to do a permaculture farm, right? So how does that come into the scope of things?
Right. So to get more specific, actually the term that came to me was forest friendly produce.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
Uh,
I'll just take 1 minute. We had used the term forest friendly produce to actually convey that we wanted to build a farm that not just reduces impact, but actually helps that system better. So the presence of the farm is making the world better. That was our that was the meaning of that whole word, forest friendly produce. And we asked Keta, okay, we need to do this. How do we do this? Yeah, Keta, go ahead.
yeah, so when you say forest friendly produce, for me, because of my past, there are many models in the world, very evolved agricultural models that came into my mind. So there are some tropic farming in Brazil, there's permaculture, there are different models that basically integrate or bring out the forest friendliness of any food growing system. And so again, I think I took it just as that, as forest friendly, and whether it was a model of permaculture or something else, we chose to say, okay, we are going to focus on what this ecosystem needs. How do we design for this particular ecosystem's need, which includes us, right, as humans, and also work on what the restorative actions of the landscape that we're addressing. So when, of course, in any process of landscaping or restorative landscaping, you would first, or even in design, the first thing is to sort of observe. So let me just go detail out a little more about how we took the brief, and then I'll explain what a food forest is, and then see how the two sort of marry. We have large scale. We have about 100+ acres to address for restoration.
In phase 1 alone.
Yes, phase 1 alone, exactly. And then the additional phase 2, phase 3. So we're looking at large belts, and like Sunit said in the beginning, that if the goal is to sort of be forest friendly, to help the world, to bring about a different kind of development strategy, you want to depend on your forest system. So that's where this large scale, having it done as large scale, is really beneficial. And so we want to basically grow food over large scales. We want to retain forest. we want to be able to feed the people of the estate, the stewards of the estate, the people who sort of the community that survives there. We want them to have a farming practice that can be kept alive. Right. So that was broadly how I looked at it. Now, when we look at permaculture, it's a very well thought out, holistic model. And inherently, it's saying that, okay, we need to, growing forests, growing a perennial system is going to help you reduce the amount of work that you do. Now, at largescapes, you want to be able to reduce the amount of human effort that's put in. Because the more on a 1 acre plot, it will be easy for us as gardeners, personal gardeners, to be able to make beds, plow, weed, But on a landscape, when you want your produce as well to come out in, commercial like quantities, for example, 100, 500 plus kgs a week of sorts. You want to be able to reduce the effort, the human effort that you put in. And at this point, yes, you make use of resources like man-made resources, machinery. You can't avoid that, but that comes at a cost. Now, Beforest, as a collective, has many people sharing the load of one large landscape. And so it made just enough sense to, if you were to firstly reduce the effort and you still had much man-made effort to be put in, it would be distributed within the collective.
Okay. Across the members, basically. Yeah.
So and this has come from Usenet. In fact, this is where I understood that, okay, this sharing of the both the load and the final, your result is what this community intends to do. And so, of course, the first step that we took was in a food forest, and you want to restore your landscape, that you have a large landscape that has to, it's largely grassland. I'm speaking about Hyderabad Collective because that's where we started. I think my conversation is going to be grounded in examples of the Hyderabad estate. So yeah, we had patches of grasslands, patches of rocky areas, and
yeah, I think Hyderabad Collective was almost at least 40% of it is primarily rocks and boulders.
Yeah. So at that time, the United Designers had already zoned out the landscape for us. So initially, a group called United Designers had clarified zones of wilderness, of where we could build our buildings and where we could farm according to what the landscape was. So we had a lot of large grassland. The initial thing to do was to add in trees. But to add in, that a tree planting system has to be secured for water. And so permaculture had this great set of tools, had a great set of criteria and guidelines that we could follow. And it had the right questions that we were to ask. So it's permaculture can be applied to different scales, to different needs. It's just that it has to be the core principles of permaculture have to be understood and applied. Hence, our brief. And so our first initiative was to build earthworks, water harvesting earthworks across the landscape. It can be anywhere because you want to address, now if you're looking at the entire estate as a production zone, you've got a patch of forest, you've got a patch of growable area, you've got your buildings, that you'll always have to zoom in and zoom out of the entire estate. The techniques of permaculture or natural farming, organic farming, do go down to the square foot level, but then when you look at the food forest at that scale, you have to zoom out and be able to plan, okay, this is largely my growing area. These are where my annuals can come from, and this is the rest of my forest can produce food as well as restore my land. So as we were discussing, in an estate, about 15% is kept away as non-farm land.
That's something that we started off with as a basic tenet.
Right, because so that's where the community houses themselves. And the remaining 85%, including so it has to take into account what the rest of the landscape has. Thanks for sharing. So largely, if you have rockland and you have an existing forested area, you want to keep that as your forested area. And so UD had already warded off a wilderness zone, and that was about 60 acres of the entire landscape.
Yeah.
And as we eliminated this, we landed up with about a clear area of 17 plus another 20 acres outside that we could actually do things with, 10 to 20 acres that we could do things with. So out of the remaining 85%, we know that 85% of land, whatever gets accounted for as wilderness or non-growable area, the food growing system, 85% of that has to be perennial. That's what we
right. No, so Hyderabad was an interesting exercise compared to Pumale, the Coorg. I feel because here we got a chance to actually start from scratch. We didn't start working on a farm that already existed, but it was almost a plain blank canvas. But if I were to take you back to day one, the first time you saw this space, right? When you're given a brief of actually planning such a large thing, and in the context that you don't really have precedents of this, like where you can actually refer to something else and say, okay, those guys did this and I think this works at scale, let me try this. You don't have those precedents in place. And I came across and we spoke about this land that was really just rocks actually. You did mention I wanted to plant water first, where the trees are important and all, but if you go back to that moment, didn't it feel like a chicken and egg to you, because you need water to put the trees in place and the trees are needed to get the water in place? And what were your thoughts like when you first saw this landscape? Was it overwhelming, or was it like, okay, no problem, I have permaculture, it scales up? What did you think?
I never felt overwhelmed until I actually started the work. When it was dream stage, when it was vision stage, it was beautiful. So like you said, plant water first. The first thing that enters my mind in any landscape is to understand the hydrology of it, the water. How does it drain? Where does it drain to? Does it drain on the surface more, or does it infiltrate and drain out into a water table more? Different landscapes have different capacities. So for me, the first thing was to understand that. And with United Designers, we did the exercise of, so any landscape you would choose to plant water first. Chicken and egg situation, it was pretty clear that it starts with the water, with trying to harvest the water. So it's an effort that you start. It's not a given that you put in the water there. It's not like we have built the tank. For an annual system, you want to secure your water before you start anything. So the effort starts at the same time. It's just that in execution, so in planning, you will place a water harvesting structure and you will place your tree system at the same time. Uh, and it's easier to plan for the water because you have time to add in the tree system. But in execution, you always dig the swales, dig the ponds, dig the recharge pits, all in the beginning. That was very clear. We entered the area that we had identified for food production, for the largest patch of food production, where we were looking at this mixed system, was pretty clear. Like you could see the slopes. We had a lake at the bottom. We had these automatic 4 beautiful terraces, and at one glance, we knew what the basic water harvesting approach was.
Okay.
Because the major study came in when we had to study the native trees, the native species of the landscape, get from support. So the Pranay, for example, other native experts supported us with seeing what are the ecological functions of those trees. Now, if you
Can I just check if Pranay is actually here? He's for the others. Pranay is a member of the Hyderabad collective as well. He helped us a lot. He knows a lot about the local wildlife, bird life, and plants, and he's one of the few guys we've met who can really identify some random herb on the landscape and say, okay, this is here. Okay, you can source it from that place. I know that guy. So yeah, that was a brief Pranay introduction. And go on, Keta. Yeah, you were talking.
Yeah. So once we had our water harvesting structures planned, in terms of how do you go about selecting species? I think that is now, since selecting those species, these tree systems is the bulk of your job when you plan the food forest. Because in selection, you have to study the impact a tree has. So ecologically. One is you want the food and you keep aside, okay, these are the species that grow in Telangana. Citruses grow pretty well in this soil and others, but there's no harm in trying new things. But ideally, in the beginning, you want to have your entire native palette ready for you to choose from. So in this native palette, we had to do a study. What all were the thorny plants? What all were pollinating species? What all trees are good for watershed, and what all trees are good for nitrogen fixing in the soil builders. Soil builders as a category is basically deciduous trees, good deciduous trees with a lot of good leaf litter. So for teak, for example, has a lot of good leaf litter. All of these, the reason we study all of these is because we want that ecological function to take place in the soil and do its work. So we are reliant on these systems and our understanding of the tree systems to do its job, so that we don't have to year on and year in go and add more cow dung, do this, do that. We don't want to be doing that at such large scales.
Yeah, I remember that initial classification we had of soil builders, erosion stoppers, and I remember there was a third category I can't recall right now.
Watershed plants.
Yes, watershed plants. Yes. Yeah.
Medicinals as well. Medicinals really support in attracting the good pests and warding off the bad pests. So there are, my initial and first exciting task, and I come to you, I remember, I was like, I want to build a bank. I want to build a knowledge bank of all our species. And this is what we're going to work with and use. So not just for Hyderabad, but our team is putting together as the collectives move forward, putting together the banks of different the native tree and their ecological functions for different regions. So we had to do that, and each tree having its ecological function. Then we had to sort of place them, understanding at a large scale what kind of impact we want. We want most of our pollination, the bees to do less work and pollination to happen in and around our food area. And so how do you balance out the tree species then? So we had to add more pollinators here. Our initial land was very, very compacted. As a grassland, it was extremely compacted. The grass was saving it. doing a good job of protecting it. But deep down, it was very compacted. So you have to also add in, look at, okay, this tree is a taproot and this tree is fibrous, and you want to add in the two systems together so that you are working on breaking that soil, working on, and as inherently the tree roots have their world of functions that they give as a gift to the soil. So all the life that they increase, all the water that they take down and take up, the nutrients exchange, you want to focus on understanding that and allowing that to happen as much as possible. So ideally, I mean, then it just makes our work pretty easy. All we have to do is go through amazing trees, understand what they do, and plan for it. So it's very, very exciting, actually.
So how do you go about that, right? Like, I mean, do you have like a bank of plants that are classified as, okay, tap roots, fibrous, this is the length of this root, this is the area that it occupies? Because I mean,
Yes.
I'm sure you don't manually run through each plant and
Yes. A lot of systems currently, when they plan for food production, even in the forestry works, they do know what fruit trees have what kind of a root system, but they're not necessarily used for soil work. They use to understand, okay, can this tree grow here and produce its fruit only?
right.
So for us to have this bank, it really helped us pick and choose and say, we want this kind of work to happen in this soil based on what soil composition we had. That's so, I mean, we basically have this with the support of, with the support of United Designers and Pranay, built this bank. We had to understand above ground, how does the tree work, and below ground, how does the tree work? On ground, in its interactions with other systems, how does the tree work? What is it calling? What is it showing?
One of the really key things in working at scale is it can't be a one-man job, right? So I'm sure you understand all this, but how did you get the folks on the ground how did they get it? We had a bunch of very enthusiastic guys, but they didn't know permaculture, they didn't know what food forest is. So how did you get it across? Was it just a straight list of tasks that they got and they executed?
No, even for planning this, when I came in, I had I was stronger in the design itself and feeling like, okay, this will fit here. But in terms of getting it done was a big thing. And while I know the steps it would take in terms of, okay, the soil needs to be dug here, you need a JCB for this, you need manpower, you need to find leaves to fill in here, you need to get the cow dung. It was very difficult to see how would it all come together and who plans this whole implementation. So it had to happen as a team. Right at the start, the guys on the ground and I were working pretty closely, building roadmaps. And you have to, one of the things, like any major task, making a backward plan is really important, working backward from your ideal task. So if you say we need to grow a food forest that sort of will be able to feed 100 families, it meant understanding how much space is required to feed one family of an annual vegetable, annual vegetables. So we really had to divide our entire food forest elements into its parts. So the tree system, the water system, then the actual annual system, and look at those individually and plan for them. And then see how all of them would fit together. So, but for us, the tree systems, the larger perennial system was a non-negotiable. So it started and it was done already. It was planned for. We had later account in for how to do the vegetables, the annual system around. And here it was a teamwork. So what I basically did was made a initial roadmap for one particular activity. At that time, we were starting in the coriander patch. We were trying to do a trial. So that was the first backward plan that we made. And then this plan came up to be then as getting more informed by the people on the ground itself, because like Vara knew what it took, how to get the cow down there. So it really involved the team's effort into knowing how to get this done. And planning, is this possible at this time? So that roadmap, while I would put in the steps, then we would sit together and retweak, okay, if this is possible at this time, it's going to take these many weeks. And so most of the time it took much longer to get things to happen, because when you plan from a goal and work backward, you don't know how much you have to account for at that time. Largely, you know your basic steps, and you have to budget it out. You have to know how many instruments it's going to take, but you don't account for the smaller emergent things. And at that time, you have to really face them, and so you have to plan for emergence within your plan.
Right. Yeah, I remember we were discussing it the other day also. Like there are actually fortunately or unfortunately we don't have as many levers to turn as conventional farming when you talk about this managing emergence, right? So new situations coming. For example, if you look at the veggie beds, let's dive a little deeper into that about the backward calculation that you were talking about. I remember telling that we are trying to do veggie boxes, 5 kilos each. We need 500 kilos every week. And from there, over to you. So how did you go about that?
So we first looked at how much, firstly, the groundwork was done, identified the possible growable areas, right? After the system was put in. So then we had mapped terraces, clear terraces, that this is what we get to work with. This is how much area we have. Second, we kept that aside and looked at the how much per acre produced can we get? How much does conventional farming do? How much does organic farming do? And what does the natural system do? At this time, it was hard because there are, you're doing desk research, and desk research includes, well, other than Google, it's calling up people in other farms, doing your case studies and saying, hey, this is the kind of produce you get. You have to be able to cover all. So we did that. We called up certain friends, our permaculture friends, understood what it takes. So we had, like at that time, to grow food for 100 families meant use up 6 acres of land. But within the 6 acres, it has to account for the pathways for, the human activity that takes place and how much space that takes up. So we went about it this way, calculating how many acres was needed to grow for one family. And how many beds or how many plants. We had to go down to the detail of how many producing tomato plants it takes to feed a family of 4.
Yes. And we also added that restriction that anything that's harvested has to reach the doorstep in the first 12 hours.
Yes, that was another.
So we didn't have the luxury of storing it.
Yeah. No, it was a very challenging but directed brief, and we're yet to meet it in many ways. And but that's the thing. So if you want to, with clear directives, you're constantly balancing out your methods and your principles, and the understanding how much time and what it actually takes to make it happen on ground. So I think one of the biggest, like in this entire journey, we had a lot of math work to do, and that is Sumit's great mind. You have to let that happen and play out, and work with that. And so it really helped give us very tangible, a tangible understanding of what it means. And then taking that to ground, was literally, so it's like I would say, I mean, planning and design in itself is not the bulk of the work. Making it happen is really the bulk of the work.
Right.
And that's what's giving you constant feedback about what's possible and or what all the things go wrong. And they go wrong and they happen at different levels, from community to the land. You have to really take feedback from the land. So we each time, I mean, we revised our this annual plotting so many times. We have always had to construct it as we got feedback, pests or management or water, you know, and that's still going on. But luckily, as this is going on, our perennial system is really taking place. So here's the good thing, because at this large landscape, we don't have to worry about, other than looking at mortality and seeing, okay, is the tree really growing fine, and giving it water from time to time. We don't have to worry much about the work that nature is doing, you know, that we have initially set up, and it's on its way. Like it is, if you see our landscape, our goal was to first invite biodiversity. Now there are some very, very clear principles for us as ecological designers. We have bought into it with all faith, because it aims to, because of understanding the connections, we know that, okay, this is what a natural system takes, and reliance on it is quite blind faith. So inviting biodiversity, increasing soil life, these are givens. Trying to harvest as much water, these are givens. And now you can see, because we started off that work, we've got more birds perching in that same area doing their job. So the birds come to eat fruits, the birds come to perch on the leaves, the birds come to eat the insects that are there, which we weren't seeing before. So Hyderabad, because of in the state, I think that it was left for quite some time. It had already quite a good wild palette of species in plants and I think birds and things like that. But they weren't really coming to the area that we needed them at that time, because you want your birds and butterflies and bees to be there in your annual growing system to do the pollination and eat your insects, eat your pests. So now, because of that initial perennial system that was set up, we've invited them. So now in a vegetable bed, you would see some 3 or 4 different butterflies and bees, different types of bees. You have the carpenter bee, the bumblebee, and the small honeybee that comes, and you can see them all in the same area. And you know, pollination is not just taking place with one particular species, and we're not reliant on that. We have different species that we can rely on to do this work. That's also one of the core principles of ecosystem-centered design, that you can't, the reason we are relying on nature, it's so interconnected. It's because the number of different elements that can support the same task, the multifunctionality of it, are more there. Whereas in a human system, if we are not able to pollinate and we do hand pollination, it takes that person. And if that person is not there, if we don't have we have to firstly get the pollen from places. You're depending on a very market system, and that becomes difficult, because if something fails over there, your entire system is. But whereas if a certain kind of bee, well, all of them come at once, but you know, if any one of them falls short, you have the rest to take it on. So,
Okay.
diversity isn't just the aesthetics, but it's doing a lot of jobs. And
So, Keta, tell me something. So, all of this that we spoke about so far is a very time-consuming process, right? So, I think at this point, I feel it's important to know there are quite a few members here, so even more the reason. I wanted to do a poll of what time horizon were people thinking when they heard food forest, and were they ready to commit to it? So there's a poll that's going to pop up on the screen, and I encourage everyone, whether you're a member or not, what is it that you're looking to commit to for the process of this restoration? We'll give it 20 seconds. Is the poll visible?
Yes.
I think 15 of 21. We're just waiting for 5 more guys to respond. All right, last 10 seconds, guys. All right, I've shared the results. They're in front of you. Are you able to see it?
Yes, Surit.
Okay, amazing. So it's really heartening to know that most of you think it's at 10 years to a generation. And I'm very glad to see no one say I want it right now. So great. I mean, we are still we're still not wholly converted to instant gratification, but because this is really a lot of work, as you guys can see, imagining the whole landscape, planting water in the first place, doing that study for the water, then planting the perennials, thinking of the food systems, back calculation, all of this. So Ketan, how long did it take for you to actually come up with the first draft of the planting calendar for the food zone?
By planting calendar, you mean the perennials, not the annuals?
No, the annuals. I'm talking about the annuals. The food system.
Right. It took us about it kept getting tweaked, but our first draft was, it took us about a month or so. We had to do studies. So we firstly of the region, and there, luckily, thankfully for us, there are a lot of different people farming, but we had to do it for our own estate. While we got numbers from our desk research and support from our friends, we had to really come up with our own, and coming up, the first draft took about a month. And then coming up with our final draft is about a year later, after sort of understanding how our plants are producing and how our need. So actually, our tomato or our brinjal or what all our plants, they can produce they can produce fruit for a lot longer. But if we are to, secure, bring in these larger amounts of food, let's say 500 kgs a week, then we can't completely rely on the brinjal phasing its life cycle in and out. We have to keep making sure that while that one set of brinjal plants are going through its curve, we start with the second, right? For the to make up the lack of the brinjal at that week itself. So we had to tweak our planting calendar. Final one only came about a year later, after doing our trials, understanding how our ground people are able to manage the food production, understanding how much produce we can secure, what kind of pests and yields drawbacks do we have, and how do we account for the losses, because not everything is while it's all edible, see, if the good thing about it is for us, nothing is waste. But when we have to, whether if it's a good tomato, it's going to go out to the veggie bags. If it's a not so good tomato, I mean, if it's not transportable, it has other options from paste tomatoes to sun-dried tomato, or our staff also is there. And the more rotting tomatoes that we couldn't really handle go into, they actually make pest repellents out of those rotten tomatoes.
Yes. In fact, we did use some of them for seeds also.
Yeah.
Like a seed bank. Yeah,
Yeah.
I wanted to actually show this what you meant by they can produce a lot longer. I just want to share my screen once and let me know if you can see it. Yeah, now visible. Yeah, so for those of you watching, this is one of the graphs that, I mean, this is how we've analyzed the veggie bags when we were doing it. So in the first cycle, there's obviously Google who tells you that certain amount can be produced per plant, and you don't. It's very difficult to understand if you can just divide it by 52 and say, if it gives this much in a year, then every week it should give this much. So the first set for the first round of iteration was purely almost an exercise of validation. Correct me if I'm wrong, Keta, here. And this was the graph that we came across, and I remember 200 was the 0.20 that you see here is what we were targeting. This is the yield per plant that week. And as you can, and Keta, you want to walk us through this graph? What is it? Where do we want to be? What did this tell you?
So if we, our need was to make sure that at least 100 kgs of tomato are coming out every week. And if one plant in one of those weeks actually yielded us our goal, which was 200 grams a plant a week, we had to really use that as our as the pivot to rely on.
Right.
And that's what gave us our 2-week staging cycle. Actually, farms generally either stage every month or every 3 weeks. Have had to stage every 2 weeks. And what this is going to lead to, so that it can lead to 2 things. Like you see, the graph is really sharp. But we would take wherever the graph has shown is crossing the line at the 200-gram line at 2 points. That's the amount of time we're going to account for taken.
Yeah, I so the way just to break that down, the way we saw this really was this point. I have the mouse, so I'm going to repeat what you just said. This point and so sorry, this point and this is the average that we needed from every plant to produce, but this is the graph of what the plant produces in reality. So the way we saw it is, okay, we have these 2 points on the curve, and by the time one plant passes through this journey and gets here, the next staging should have hit this point.
Yeah,
that's how we saw it. So by the end of its peak performance, there should be the next cycle of beds, which is at their peak performance. And by that time, that gets to the, the fag end of the performance period. The third cycle should hit this. Obviously, it won't work like a factory. But then this is like a very optimistic scenario where, imagine if this really happens, instead of 200, we would actually have 400 every week, 400 grams every week, because the previous cycle would be at its fag end of the peak performance and the new cycle would be at the start of the peak performance, right? So we are always over capacitying ourselves and trying to match what we wanted. I remember we discussed this, that normally if you look at a conventional farm, if let us say we notice that nature doesn't work like a factory, right? So let us say if we notice, okay, the flowering is happening a bit delayed. In a conventional practice, you have these methods to accelerate that, right, chemically. But in this case, you don't actually have it. You don't have those levers that you can turn. What do you have? What do you do? How did you react? Can you talk about like one challenge that was really, you know, it, you overcame by actually adjusting the parameters?
Yeah. So after all this planning, we actually came down to, okay, we need 8 stagings. And for 8 stagings, per staging, we need 200 beds of each staging. And we had that cycle. However, as many plants as you account for, when nature hits, it doesn't how much it hits.
Hashtag hailstorm.
Yes. Hailstorm. We did all our planting and then we had a hailstorm and literally lost all the produce to the ground. But yeah, no, there have been many challenges. We've also had a major, being in this landscape, firstly, we didn't know what all wildlife is actually going through its whole life cycle there. And these and wildlife, I mean down to the very, very small ones. Moths. So we didn't know how much damage moths could do. And there were basically in their life cycle, they become these worms, the cutworms. So we came across a very, very common problem once. And it looked like all of our plants were going to die. Immediately, all the methods. So knowing that we had to go about it organic, right? We couldn't just go and sort of spray a chemical and get them to sort of die out.
Right.
There were teams picking out worm by worm on the ground, okay, putting them in. Then there were the same team was also pulling out the affected leaves, because once you have a pest, it's also more vulnerable to other pests, and then it would spread. Diseases spread really fast. The cutworms, wow, there were so many. So we had to go ahead with that chili garlic sprays. Try while trying to take out the cutworms, you had to make sure the plant is continuing to get the nutrition it needs. So Jeevamrut, we tried organic methods. There isn't other than going chemical, there isn't there for us, because we are we're addressing a brief. It's not like, oh, natural farming you can't spray anything or you can't add anything. It's not a holy Bible in that sense. But we have to make sure that any task we do has to be well thought about. And are we using the right material? If it's going to take us a lot of energy and material cost, a lot of footprint for us to get something to support our plants, then we would try other ways first. That would really be a last resort. So we tried, we know that the worms can't go across the beds when it's pokey. So there are a lot of methods: eggshells, ash, and finally diatomaceous earth. So a diatomaceous earth is just crushed rock, basically crushed rock powder. But it was our last resort, because it did have to be purchased. And it had to be purchased, and you get it in the market, and then again you're back to a market system. But it's all organic, it's natural, it's just crushed. So we didn't have a problem there. So permaculture or whatever isn't like saying don't use chemicals, it is saying, but it's not just about the chemical. It's about how that product got there in the first place, what it took for it to get there, what was the footprint ecologically, what did it take. So that's how our thinking went in. So, a lot of agricultural schools, you're just given a list of what to put and what not to, and nobody goes beyond to think, okay, where is it really coming from? How is it made? Other than when they have to address the cost of transport. But we have to think about those things. So tried as much locally, and yes, we were able to overcome the cutworm problem after but it took a toll in the sense that it took a lot more workers to sort of pick all the worms they could see week after week until the plant was back to being okay. So that's one of the efforts, and yeah, that's what it took. It has to be there. There is a lot of groundwork, and
Did
it's
it repeat again? Did it repeat in the second staging also?
we did have a few, but we had less. In
What
fact,
was the difference?
no. So initially, actually, the first it affected both our stagings at once.
Hmm.
But I can speak about the nursery plants because there I have clear numbers. Our first nursery sowing, 100%, all of it was eaten by cutworms. So we
Hmm.
learned our lesson there. We had to, we knew, okay, our soil is bad and it has to be protected. We can't, being in this naturalistic ideal, scenario, you want to say, oh, the tree will do it. Here you can just put it under a bed in a tree and that's going to be fine. It's all natural. So what's the harm? But that's the
Hmm.
harm.
Hmm.
Because natural system, you've got your wildlife living its life cycles there. And at what point they choose to come in to interact with our food growing system, you don't know. So we had to shift out of there and we had to create a protected space, a nursery, which initially wasn't in so much in the, it was in the plan in terms of taking up space, but having a protected space wasn't in the plan. But we, so we were, in the first time we were able to save it by half in the nursery sowing. The next nursery sowing was by half. Now we are currently, so then we had to actually shift to trays and make it above ground. We couldn't put it in the ground, but then we had a problem with how good the plants were actually growing. We want to, so in nursery sowing, when we initially planted them in the beds in the ground, they did really well, but they were eaten by cutworms. In terms of growth and germination, they were fine, but they were eaten by cutworms. So protecting them from cutworms meant to take them out of the ground. But we also saw cutworm attack even in our trays, and this meant that the moth is also laying eggs in the trays. And we came down to but then plants were a smaller size, so we have to now again go back to the ground and just be able to be okay with taking more protective measures, such as putting the diatomaceous earth, putting in, spraying certain sprays and watching over. And hopefully as we are going, slowly identifying these key gaps to fill up, So our final protected space, the kind of soil that we add, is taking account of all of that.
Right.
Yeah, we reduced it. Now it's not. We planted for extra. We had to plant extra, but again, even if 50% of that extra is lost, it still is a big number to lose.
Right. So Keta, so let's zoom out once. And if you look at the 30,000 feet view, right, of a farm, what would you say would be the essential elements, the systems that need to be in place? We did speak about water. Somewhere along the way, we mentioned a nursery. So when you look at a complete working cycle of a farm, what would be the essential systems that need to be in place to make that full circle?
Right. So yes, like you said, water at first. You want to make sure you have a good drained landscape, and you are able to harvest that drained water to use. So you don't want to rely on your bore as much as possible, because your can be used for domestic usage, but these plants don't need that. The plants, if you use a drip system, do need clean water, but they in terms of nutrition, they can use all the groundwaters we have, and our groundwater is continuously getting recharged along with the water table every season, every year in the monsoon season. So we made our source of water the lake and the well, that groundwater store. And we did our water harvesting structures. So first you want to ensure that you have that. The second thing you want to ensure is, when you plan your perennial system, you really have to take care to put in all the natives that you can as much as possible, because those are the guys that are going to survive in your landscape with less human effort. or intervention. And also, the native species around there, they are so much more in balance with the water uptake and their functions that they do on the land. So we had to set that up. And the second thing that's really important is to map out all your processes that are going to take place. So this is where a tool such as a mind map helps, where you have to center as your, let's say it's a vegetable bed or a tree pit. You know that so our method is always to put in as much food and energy as possible in the beginning and reduce our work over the next few years. So you want to, when you plant a tree, it's not just planting it in, you get the poly bags of the tree about 1 feet, 9 by 12 is your poly bag, and you dig, a 1 foot deep hole and a 1 foot wide hole. It's not, you want to support the tree because our soil is so compacted. You want to support it by digging really huge pits, firstly. Many people just put back the soil because the tree can survive even when it just has loose soil to go through. It will still extend its roots. But we want to, nurture the tree as much as possible and give it the food. So we did a mix of leaves, brown leaves, dried leaves, and wood mixed with cow dung, mixed with cow urine, mixed with soil. So this is ensuring that you're giving its basic nitrogen, carbon, and you're basically activating the decomposition and all the biology that you have to initially in the soil itself. And then in that you plant the tree. So now for this, we need material, right? And it's not just going to happen at once. So in your initial plan itself, so as to see what is your scope of energy investment, you have to be able to plan out, okay, where is your biomass coming from? Where is your cow dung coming from? And where is your water coming from? So water we had secured. Now biomass.
And the brown matter also.
Brown matter, yes, that's what. So brown matter was our biggest thing. Okay, we had an entire forest that we could hunt in, but it would take long. It would take days to go and collect leaves. It's a scrub forest. You have to find the leaves in the right season. Were we to wait for the season, or were we to of dry leaves, or were we to start our processes with locally available material? So the time that we needed brown matter, it was it was the end of monsoon, I remember, and there weren't many brown leaves. We couldn't collect it, and it would take a lot of manpower to do that. So we chose with going down to the local, the village below, and getting as much of their rice husk and paddy straw as possible as our brown matter material.
Right.
And the reason but we were very sure that we have to fill in the food as much as possible beforehand, because this is what's ensuring for the next many years, we don't want to keep,
You don't want to keep adding.
Yes, exactly. You don't
Right.
want to keep adding on top. You want all the work to start below, and you've started your process, because after that, nature is going to take on, it's going to go and do its work.
Sorry, go on.
Right. So you have to be able to map out where these are coming from, where you're getting your biomass, and if you have to look at what season is right. So if we were to start new in a new collective, that's what we'd be doing. First, identify in which year, at year 0 or at year 1, do we need to begin collecting. We also plan for further biomass in the future. We have to we have to secure our system. It's not like pehle dal diya, what we have put is going to last. We know exactly how it's going to last. It's going to last a while, and it's going to start doing its job, but we want to be secured even more and grow our own biomass. So we planned for where all we would grow biomass easily. Where was it accessible for humans to? So we knew pathways in our scrub forest is a good place, because that's where our Yoda of the site can go and actually chop and drop the material, the wood easily. You don't want to put it somewhere in the forest where a person really has to travel far to carry wood. You want to reduce human effort that way. So, we planned for biomass. We planned for we would get it in the future, and we had to figure out at the time where we would get it for our immediate need, the biomass and the cow dung. We did a lot of cow dung planning as well, if you remember in the beginning.
How many cows is it boiling down to if we talk about the cow dung?
Uh, the number varies because actually it's very difficult. We had come up to about 40, but I think that was the wrong number. I think between 20 and 40 was the for the estate. But it's really difficult because to make sure, all you can do is measure in the morning how much you're able to collect. Because the cows also
Yeah, they
then
are not factories either, so they won't always give you the same amount. So let's actually draw this back to the full circle, right? You spoke about planting water first, and then right now we were speaking about planning those systems. How much dung we need, how much water we need, how much brown matter we need, and so on, right? So I want to again throw a quick poll and just see, if we really understand planning water, which is like the first step that you mentioned. So this poll is again for everyone, although it is centered around the Hyderabad collective that we were discussing. Is it visible now?
yeah.
So again, can you guys go ahead and try taking a guess? We'll make this a quick one. We'll wait another 10 seconds and we'll stop because we're already well past the time. All right, I'm stopping. So, yeah, I think so. The interestingly in Hyderabad, it turned out to be close 54.
Yeah.
Yeah, 54. And I remember the water budget that we needed was about somewhere around 30 to 35 million liters annually. So, so there was a very interesting backward calculation again. I understand. Yeah, it was a wild guess. For those of you who don't know how big the Hyderabad collective is, yeah, it was a shot in the dark. But yeah, it's not like the right answer is winning any prizes here. So, yeah, so I have a feeling we've run out of time. Suma, I think it was supposed to be a 1 hour session, so I'll sort of ask you one last question and we'll go into a Q&A because I don't want the questions to go unanswered. So the last question is, we've spoken about how we've designed, how we've calculated, and what the wins were. What were the losses? Where there obviously have to be places where we designed but the design failed, right? And
So,
and I'm talking about instances where we have not yet found the answer. It's still a learning curve.
yeah. So I think one of the thing is we are one goal we're constantly chasing, currently still chasing, is to meet the amount of vegetables, the quantity of vegetables we want. And we have, I think, issues at so one of the places I remember where the design failed, like I said, where in the beginning it was monsoon and it was at the end of monsoon and we were looking for brown material. And design, according to me, and if I had to sort of, I'm quite harsh with myself, and when I reflect, I knew that, okay, should have planned for where all the biomass would come from right at the beginning. So that if it took manual labor, now also at that time, I didn't know what it would take in terms of cost for manual labor to collect leaves, or, is it easier to get it elsewhere? But yeah, it was more. It was at the end of monsoon, and we hadn't gotten our material, and we had to sort of firefight and hunt for material right then. Beds that we had created because we were hunting for material, and we entirely didn't understand the full execution, the all the tasks that it would take for execution to happen beautifully. We had to make compromises as well. So we didn't go ahead, and I feel that we lost out on initially filling in the right kind of mix and material, putting together basic theories and trying to say, okay, yes, we know that we need this much carbon, this much nitrogen, we need this kind of material, and where we got that material, what that material was in God's hands at that point. So that's where I felt that, okay, for this kind of an initiative, right at the start, I want to be able to map out where I'm going to get my material from. What are our sources? See, I feel like in our entire process, a lot more could come from in-depth ground research. And it's a lot mostly to do with material. And then secondly, the second biggest thing where we sort of missed out was understanding our threats. Understanding our threats is a big thing. And okay, we know that in farming, we're going to have a lot of pest issues, and there are these methodologies, spraying Jeevamrut, spraying neem oil, all of that is there. But the extent to which it happens, so from the hailstorm to the cutworms to not having water for an entire week for the plants, how that took it out. I remember one of our initial experiments, the pump failed, and plants didn't get water for a week, and we lost our entire system. So that's where I know that then this I would like to say with the some my feet on the ground, that our perennial system is supposed to make up for that. And because it's doing the job of retaining as much moisture as possible as it can. So we need to accelerate its growth. We need to account for as much as we possibly can for it, so that it can hold down moisture in the ground. And let's say we lose out on water, in between, and it shouldn't be hit so badly that we lose everything. Some sure, but yeah. And ideally, the goal is to achieve less to no irrigation, 5% to no irrigation system.
Yes. But it will get there. Like we decided, it's a 10-year journey and not a I want it right now situation. So yeah, so Keta, I think let's move to some questions and then open up the floor. So there's a question from Raj, which is in Hyderabad, what was the reason behind using a pond liner instead of leaving it in a natural state? I'm assuming he's talking about the irrigation pond.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the only one that has the pond liner. So ideally, there were two ways we could have gone about it. We could have taken the lake as our main source, the well as our direct source, and put in a much higher HP pump that would irrigate the entire system. It's just that the entire system was on a height, and it would take a very high HP, between, I think, 15 HP pump to be able to irrigate all of this well enough. And that would have to be constantly running for 6 hours at a stretch if it had to. And that's a lot of energy. And if something fails with that pump, then that's plants again will not get water. The farm pond, I'll get to why the pond liner, but the farm pond itself was so that we could sort of secure. See, there are many reasons. Every element has its multifunctionality. Now, the farm pond is not just saving us energy by having water stored at a higher point and using a lesser HP to irrigate the terraces next to it. But it's also acting as a water storage at a different level of the land. And any kind of further water harvesting actions that we take, whether it's coming big, and this is situated near the housing cluster as well, can be connected further on to this farm pond. And we can actually, you want to place elements and allow the flexibility for it to grow and be connected with another system in the future. As of right now, I mean, as of now, I may not know, okay, this is exactly what's going to happen. But like I said, we have to plan for emergence and we have to leave room for the flexibility to sort of come in. So for us, for three main reasons. And second, and then having a water body at different points of the landscape makes it easier for your biodiversity to get that water. The bees don't have to travel that far. The butterflies don't have to travel that far to get water and then travel back. It's really reducing work for them.
It also acts like an attractor also, not just reducing work.
Exactly. More birds and things will come and sweep, and you have a magical place. At the end, the magical place is like really the added benefit of it all. That's the beauty. Like we don't actually account for beauty in our planning, but ecological designers account for beauty in their planning.
No, we do, because one of the 4 returns is inspiration.
Yes, exactly. So this is this is really targeting that.
The question was more around why use a liner. I don't think Raj was questioning why the pond also.
Sorry.
Yeah.
The liner, our soil, it would take in all the water and we would not be able to have a storage just for the sake that it's a store, and have to put a pump in it. And either you put a natural clay liner, would also take some time to set in. And then if you begin to see, our annual growing system was already in place and that you have to secure water. With putting in clay liner and having it, that also comes at a cost. Yes, and sometimes, like I said here, we relied on the market with the pond liner. But it was a good immediate solution to what we needed at the time. And because our annual system is already in place, so hence a liner. But in the future, if we reached a point in time where really there wasn't so much other activity that needed priority and needed human effort, and if you had the time and space to really make everything down to natural materials, it's just that you have to test the natural material as well. That's going to have, so how much the clay liner is able to stop the water, we have to keep playing with that. So it's much easier to keep the system clean with a pond liner. In the future, we could try with smaller systems and make those do trials with like the clay liner, stone and things like that as a natural. But this current pond itself, just to even with the liner, it's planned in such a way that it can have its grasslands and tree systems around it. So that is also being added in. And it's going to look like a natural marshland actually, eventually, once we're done with it.
Right. Now, Vamshi has a very interesting question. With the current storage capacity of the lake that you speak about, how many rainless seasons can the food forest go on for?
We need currently, so how this would be in the next 10 years, at year 5 and at year 10, it might be a different scenario. But in year 3 or 4, we need the rain every monsoon. Every year. So once every year. We haven't had to fill the lake or get excess water without then the source being the monsoon rains. But we need the monsoon rain every year to fill up the lake and the system.
So I'll add more to that. Vamshi, so the question is, the lake itself is about 30 million, and now it's been extended to, this season it's been extended to about 50 plus. But what we mean is, but the area, the farm itself receives about should receive about 350 to 400 million liters of rainfall every year. But that doesn't mean all 400 million liters are actually sitting on the farm. The lake fills, the soil absorbs a bit, the water table gets recharged, the rest overflows and flows out. So like Keta said, we've never had to charge the lake, but we do have to. We haven't actually measured the recharge rate of the lake yet, right, Keta? We did for the well, but not the lake, right? So at this point, the lack of other information, we'll have to say we need the rain to come.
Yeah.
But hopefully, in a few more years, the all the brown matter that's been added will be enough to store moisture all the way to the next monsoon. Radhesham has a similar question again. Just like the 37 million liters of annual water budget, do we have high level targets on food generation or any other such metrics?
Do you want to take that first? Then I can detail it out.
Yeah, I mean, so see, so broadly speaking, we looked at it as grains, pulses, vegetables. So we started off with the veggies first, and our research told us it's about 5 kgs of veggies for a family of 4 every week, and that's what we were targeting, and that's how the 100. We rounded up the 80 families to 100 and said 500 every week. That obviously like everything else, we add a little bit of over capacity to it and end up with, when we say 100 families, we plan for 150 at least, and so on. And similarly, you have an annual, you on an average, you know how much every person consumes in terms of grains, pulses, and that's how we arrive at a high level. This is how much food needs to be generated. What it translates to at this point, what at least what has come to me is, okay, to do this we need this much area. That's the food production zone that Keta was talking about.
Yeah.
So this is my understanding of the situation. So Keta, if you want to add more details to that.
Yeah, the high-end goals, I mean, if I understood the question right, has just been about how much we need. And we think of abundance once we have met what we need. So like what we need is to be able to secure food for the 80 to 100 families. So that's been our goal. Yeah. And further, I mean, when we achieve that, I'm sure there is a lot more that can come out.
Yes. The follow-on to that, can you share a few case studies of permaculture-based food forests of comparable sizes in the world so we can research more? I have not come across any. Short answer. I have come across claims, but on further look in or dive in, I have not come across any. But Keta, have you seen any around the world?
Our scale is food forest as at an estate, but there are, so if you talk about an estate being a food forest, I have not come across as that. But there is food forest as a food growing system happening at I mean, back in England, there was, we were growing vegetables at, I think, 3 or 4 acres. There are CSA farms. There's Anantgram also that's doing large scale farming. Yeah, but at this scale, I haven't.
Yeah, which is why I always tell Keta that you are the first person actually doing this. So enjoy the sunshine. So yeah, the next thing is Rangarao has a question about we were getting around 20 veggie bags, but the hailstorm destroyed the veggie bed. If the plan is to ensure 100 families for veggies for 100 families, what's the long-term plan? How do you come up with a plan to prevent a hailstorm or the damage that a hailstorm causes?
At this point, hailstorm, it's coming from the top. You have to protect the top. Think very practically and logically. And for us, that is to be able to protect it through this perennial, through a canopy layer. So as much as possible. But see, we can't avoid that. Our plan wouldn't be to avoid it, it would be to
Have a plan B.
yeah. So
It's not the way. So, I think our goal actually, we've discussed this a lot of times actually after the hailstorm, because the one is, of course, the protection would be to have these multiple layers so that this bottom layer actually does not face all the brunt. But as you know, those systems will take time to emerge and grow. The second thing is, of course, what is the plan? You can't avoid it always, but you need to have a plan B, which is what we were discussing actually very recently, that why does it always have to be rice, pulses and veggies? Can there be other systems into the food, introduced into the food? And that's a very good thought. That's what we call, let's think outside the box and come up with other food systems, which, let's say everything fails, there's just bad rain, you can't grow rice, you can't grow veggies. What is it that you can, what would be in the food basket at that point? We're in the process of making that plan B.
yeah. So exactly, like you said, Sunit, you want to be able to have, because as we saw, even if we had 100 beds of tomato, even if we planted 200 beds of the same tomato, we'd still not save ourselves from this hailstorm. All our 200 beds are going to go. But there are a few other systems. So our trellising system that is sort of spread across, although it works in two ways. One is it's, our gourds and everything are going to sort of be able to cover up. We want enough sun, and we want to block out hailstorm rain. So having light partitions like the trellis and the plants that will keep seasonally growing on it will protect some the understory a little bit. The second is to rely more on things like haldi, ginger, put out those systems, grow those bioannuals, so that we can still continue to have a yield. Those guys won't be affected. So Lord, try out sweet potato and things like that, different versions of food. Yeah, that's the way we would go ahead.
And in case there are deficient rains 1-2 years back to back, will we be able to manage for vegetables or food and residents with the lake water, or we have to buy water? So fair enough, but I'll repeat that I think this came before we explained it. But the lake stores 350 30 million liters of the 350 odd million that's expected as a monsoon. So let's say we have 0 for 2 continuous years and we have used up the entire budget, then yes, we will be in a situation where you'll have to dig down into the underground to catch up those reserves. So the idea is, in the surplus years, all these years where we are getting the rain and the lake is filling up, we continue to recharge the underground water tables also. We may not use it today, but there's no harm in building the bank for situations like this.
Yeah, and in all honesty, our vegetables might take a hit at the point if we don't have. Of course.
Yeah. Okay. Were there any similarities in the planning between Hyderabad and Pumale? Similarities or differences? I think this will be the last question from the chat. So were there any differences?
Well, differences in the technicalities. Differences in plan. Actually, so for Pumale, in terms of the food forest, we've got Clear Chandamal planning it. So the approach is slightly different. There, I think we didn't have to do as much calculations as we have to do for Hyderabad. There is already, she already has a system that has led her to say, okay, this is the amount of area that we need. So there, but otherwise, and where I meant technicalities, there are differences just in terms of how much water you drain out things, but the system is largely similar. You have kitchen garden trees, you have the perennial system supporting your annuals, and you have a bunch of fruit trees. Now in Coorg, the fruit trees really have to be planned according to threat, because there the threat largely are elephants and things that come in your way. Now you want to have the food, like in Hyderabad, we'd have a major monkey problem. In Coorg, you'd have a major elephant problem, and the way she has ideated is to have food forest across along the paths. There we don't need biomass. So for us, like in Hyderabad, we've had to plant a lot of biomass trees on the pathways so as to easy access and be able to use it. In Coorg, you just have to access the fruits. There's enough soil work and things, the leaf litter that's happening. We don't have to plan for it. So that's one difference. And the species are different. But otherwise, in terms of including medicinals, kitchen garden, annual, perennial, all of that is pretty similar.
Right. So let's open the floor for maybe 2 more questions and we'll wind up because we're already 40 minutes over time. Vivek, I hand this over to you. You can take it up from here and we can probably open the floor up now.
Thank you very much. And it was really insightful. Thank you, Keta, and thank you, Sunit. And here I would like to invite people who have visited Hyderabad. And I remember definitely one name, and Mohan, you are there. So you have visited the site a couple of times and you had very insightful questions. Is it okay for you to unmute yourself and ask whatever I could not answer? Okay, looks like Mohan is not around. Mohan, should I unmute you? Okay. Okay, so we'll come back to Mohan. So anybody else?
I'm sorry. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
yeah.
I was unmuted. I'm really
Yes,
sorry.
yes,
Yeah.
please go ahead.
Got it. Oh, this is fantastic information. I mean, I've always been excited about this whole Beforest project and the initiative you guys have taken. Really admire Sunil, who had this beautiful vision. And I think Keta is doing such a beautiful work. I mean, this really nourishes our soul when we deal with the earth and the plants and all that. I mean, this is really beautiful human work. Yeah. So fantastic stuff. I did make note of a lot of things. I'll separately reach out to you guys with my questions and all that. But since I've been attending quite a lot of sessions, I've got a lot of clarity on a lot of things. No questions for today, but I'll reach out first.
Sure. Thank you, Mohan. Thank you very much.
Super. Fantastic. Thanks.
Great. Perfect. So then this session is open for everybody else also in the room. So please unmute yourself or raise your digital hand or come on video so that I know that you have a question. Or if you want to add something from your side as a concluding comment. And don't leave right now because I have a 3D rendition of Hyderabad Collective. And I have 2 reels of the Hyderabad site as well as Coorg site, the kind of transformation which has been done in last 2 monsoons by Keta and the team which is working on the ground. So that anyway I'll run once we conclude this session. But meanwhile, if any question is there from Shrikaran, yeah, please, Raj.
What are the trees you are using to build the soil in Hyderabad right now? And also the grass layer?
Yeah. Oops, I'm echo.
So I have muted Raj. You can go ahead, Keta.
So we've it's a number of deciduous trees, mulberry, teak, but although not so much teak, but some teak, pongamia, which is a native, Pongamia pinnata, a bunch of them. These are good soil builders because they have a lot of leaf litter. Even Bahunia, Bahunia, double plays as our pollinator as well as biomass. Then of course we have Gliricidia, we have Sesbania, and Harra. Haras is Venya, I think the Telugu name for it. There are some, I'm still learning the Telugu names. Yeah, those are the trees that we're using as soil. And some,
Yeah.
they give a lot of leaf litter.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking is I am into 3rd year into my journey. Like we have a farm. So we did a lot of things, like we have a pond we started last year and it didn't hold water for long. So this year we introduced clay layer.
Yeah, how's that?
I mean, this time, I mean, it's just starting to rain, so we have to see whether it will hold for longer duration. But I am okay to give it few years for it to just see if it holds. I planted some bamboo vetiver.
Yeah.
I-
Water. You need the water to be available for the plant also to survive.
Yeah. So I'm doing it on a small scale. I mean, not much, but like whatever I think will suit. So thanks for all the insights you provided.
Yeah, mulberry Gliricidia is really good. If it's in Hyderabad, even anywhere, even in the north.
Yeah,
And
I was looking to introduce Glyceridia this year.
just mix it up. That's what helps.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Raj. Thank you very much. Any other question from anybody in the room? Okay, so on that note, if you have any further query, question, you can drop a mail on hello@beforest.co, or you can directly drop a mail to keta@beforest.co, and we'll be happy to hear. If you have a question, we'll be happy to respond. If you have any input, any comment, or any thread where we can start the conversation with you and make our planet better, to create the food forest, despite of all the challenges which comes on the way. So thank you very much, everybody. And while you are leaving, I'm just sharing or just displaying a couple of reels from the transformation work which has happened in last 2 monsoons. Session is formally closed. And once these reels are completed, then I'll